Hey guys, welcome back to another F1 Fantasy video, and in today's video I'm going to be going over what team you should pick for the Hungarian Grand Prix, what team I'm going to pick. I'm going to show my league, I'm going to show all the updates that have happened over the past week and a half, as there's quite a lot to talk about. But anyway, before we get into that, make sure to like and subscribe, follow my Twitter, join my F1 Fantasy League, and let's get into it. So I'm going to start off the video with the main updates that has happened, and basically, well, the main one is Daniel Ricciardo has replaced Nick De Vries. He's worth 4.5 million now, and I'll be talking about it later in the video, but it looks like a pretty decent option if you want a differential. And then the main price changes are as follows: 0.2 mil price increase for Max Verstappen, 0.5 mil increase for Alonso, 0.3 mil for Perez, Russell and Hamilton. Norris is up 1.5 million, which is insane. Zhou finally moved up 0.5 mil. Piastri moved up 1 mil. Both Williams moved up in price as well, a 0.5 mil I believe. Aston Martin also up 0.5 mil, with McLaren up 1 mil and Williams 0.5 mil as well. And for me, those are the main price changes. Yes, some other drivers have had price changes like the Ferraris, but I don't think it's that necessary, as I don't think you should be picking them. So let's head on to what team you should use for Hungary. And now for me, there's three options. There's the main option where you've been playing this game from the start and you've got quite a bit of money to spend. Then you've got the differential option, and then you've got the cheap option. So I will start with the main option, which has quite a lot of variation to it. But I'll first talk about Verstappen. He got 46 points in Silverstone last weekend, 25 points in race positions, qualified first, fastest lap 10 points, and race overtake bonuses 1. He's worth 28.1 million now. Realistically, you have to have him in your team. There is no one else better for F1 Fantasy. You will also need Sergio Perez in your team. He got 26 points in Silverstone, race position 6th, qualifying position he got none because he qualified 15th. But technically 16th. Position gain 9 points, and overtake bonus is 9 points as well, showing just how strong someone like Perez still is in F1 Fantasy, because the amount of overtakes he gets in a race is ridiculous. But it's because his qualifying is so bad, and as you can see, it doesn't actually hamper him that much. Then final drivers wise, Alonso you need in your team also. He didn't actually do that great in the Silverstone Grand Prix. Race position 7th, qualified 9th. That's 8 points, and then he got a few overtake bonus points. But basically, he still is such a cheap driver to have, and he's just a sure thing, you know. He's always going to get you around 20 to 30 points. Yes, in Silverstone it was a bit different. I think Aston Martin will do a lot better in a circuit like in Hungary. And then, of course, you need Red Bull and Aston Martin. And basically, Red Bull, yes, they're expensive, but they have 910 points, which is almost double the amount of the next best team points-wise, which is Mercedes on 490. So it's a no-brainer. You have to have Red Bull in your team. And then Aston Martin, again, normally I would be all for having the top 2 constructors, because that's how crucial constructors are in F1 Fantasy. But as we all know this season, because of how well Aston Martin are doing and how cheap they are, it makes more sense to go for the Aston Martin that will always get you similar team points to the Mercedes for 16 million less. So let's get on to the actual first team you can choose, which is Verstappen, Perez, Piastri, Alonso, Zhou, Red Bull and Aston Martin. Now, for me, Piastri is the next best thing to come into F1 Fantasy. Now that McLaren's got their season rolling, he's cheaper than Stroll, who's really starting to cheese me off with how little points he's getting. He's cheaper than Gasly, he's cheaper than Norris. Yes, Norris would probably be the better person to pick, but because of the price difference, Piastri is so cheap, and you can just replace Stroll in your team. You can replace any low-costing driver with Piastri. Yes, in Hungary, it might not be the best thing to do because the McLaren we've not seen at a low-speed corner-dominated track. But we're about to find out, and realistically, it's purely because I'm just getting fed up with Stroll. Then, to go with Piastri, I would also have Zhou in my team. I've had Zhou for the whole season. He hasn't really let me down yet. He always gets around 10-ish points. In Silverstone, he got 6. He just gets position gains, because it's actually quite funny. He always qualifies so bad that in the race, if there's a DNF or if someone crashes out or anything, he just picks up the scraps, and that's why it's so good to have someone like him in the team. That's why it's actually good to have Tsunoda as well. Like always, there are multiple people you could use for your 5th driver pick. Again, the other option is Ricciardo. I think it's a great option to go for because he's valued at 4.5 mil. If he has one good race, he'll get you 0.5 million and then you can switch over to someone else. But realistically, Ricciardo, Zhou, Tsunoda, Sargent and Hülkenberg are all good choices for your fifth driver. It just depends on who you want to choose. So it is really up to you out of those 5 drivers for the fifth driver shootout who you want to go for. Personally, for me, I've been going for Zhou, but I've actually switched it to Ricciardo, which I'll be showing on my team, purely just because I'm feeling a differential in Hungary, and I just want to see how well he does. But then, final variation to the main team option would be Verstappen, Perez, Alonso, Stroll, Zhou, Red Bull. Again, like I said with the Zhou, I've just put Zhou as an example here, but it can be all of those 5 drivers I've already spoken about. And realistically, Stroll, he is the safe option. He's always going to get you okay points. But basically, I'm fed up with sticking up for him because I'm constantly saying he will do better, he will do better. Now that Aston Martin have lost quite a lot of pace, it might be time to switch over to a Piastri or a Gasly. But for now, he's still the safer option as Aston Martin seem to be the most reliable out of McLaren and Alpine options. Then finally, for the main option, one driver I have not spoken about is Pierre Gasly. So Pierre Gasly got -3 points in Silverstone. He's worth 8.6 million. He basically just got a shit ton of race positions lost. But for me, I just think Gasly is too expensive and Stroll and Piastri are the better options, especially with Alpine not having that many upgrades recently. They're falling behind. They're now like the 6th fastest car on the grid. So I would steer clear of Gasly for now. But also, I think what is a great option for now, because of how unknown F1.5 is at the minute, with who's going to be the fastest, McLaren, Mercedes, Aston Martin, Ferrari. Even Alpine could get into the mix every now and then. Final fix could be a great option to be used in the next few races. Now, like for me, I'm going for Piastri and Ricciardo, but say I got the wrong move, I could easily switch them back out for Stroll and Zhou if they're showing to be better. So I think Final Fix is a great chip option for the Hungarian race this weekend. Then onto the differential option, which would be as followed: Verstappen, Perez, Alonso, Piastri, Hülkenberg, Red Bull and McLaren. So, as you can tell, you'll be getting rid of Aston Martin for the McLaren. And for me, I would not be going for this option this weekend, potentially in Spa. But like I've said about Hungary, apparently the McLaren is good in high-speed corners and in braking. And the Hungarian Grand Prix just doesn't have that many aspects of high-speed corners. Yes, the braking should be pretty good, so I'm still thinking McLaren will get top 10, but I don't think they'll be anywhere near their pace in Austria or Silverstone. But like I said, it's a great differential to have. Again, depending on your budget, you'd have to bring in Piastri or Hülkenberg, or potentially someone cheaper than Piastri, or if you have a little bit more money, you can bring in Stroll. But that's the main layout I would go for a differential team this weekend. I'm going to do the cheap team, as I know not everyone's had a good start to the season, or some people may have started late and not have much money, considering my team budget now is 110 million, which is absurd. And obviously some people might only have 100 million, 105 million. So I picked out a team for anyone with 100 million, around 102 million, and around 105 million. The cheap team for 100 million is as followed: Verstappen, Perez, Ricciardo, Albon, Hülkenberg, Red Bull and Aston. Now, for me, Albon is a great option if you don't have the money to bring in a Piastri, Stroll, even Gasly or Norris, as he gets you 8 points in Silverstone, 8th position, 8th qualifying, 1 overtake bonus. Yes, he's 6.9, he's shot up in price, but he is a better option than the other people around that price, which is like Magnussen, Bottas. So Albon is definitely a great option to have if you can't afford the other drivers in the 8 million bracket. Also, I chose Hülkenberg. That is purely because he is a cheap driver at 3.8 million. Yeah, he only got you 0 points in the Silverstone race, but realistically, if you upgraded to a Zhou or a Tsunoda or a Ricciardo, they might only get you 5 to 6 points more, and Albon, I think, will cover that for you. So 100 million, I think that's the best team you could get for 100 million. Now, if you had anywhere around 101 million, you could have the same team, but like I've said, upgrade Albon to a Piastri. If you had around 102 million, you can go for Stroll in that position again, like I've said. And then for around 105 million, 104.5 million to be precise, you can have Alonso instead of Piastri, Stroll or Albon. So for me, those are all the teams you could use for Hungary. Now I will show the team that I'm going to be using. I've gone over it already, so I'll just briefly explain why. But my team will be as followed: Verstappen, Perez, Alonso, Piastri, Ricciardo, Red Bull and Aston Martin. Now, Ricciardo, like I've said, I've taken a gamble on. I'm hoping he just has good first race in the AlphaTauri. Also, I have faith in my boy, so let's see what happens. And then Piastri, like I said, with Stroll, he's just annoying me at this point because Stroll just needs to get more points. And I feel like Piastri, yes, still is the differential. Stroll would definitely be the safer option, but if you screw this up and Piastri gets worse points, it's only going to be a maximum of 10 points you're losing out, and that's not that bad in the long run. So last race weekend, I got 237 points, Max Verstappen 46 times 2 on my extra DRS, Alonso 12, Stroll 2, Guan Yu Zhou 6, Perez 26, Red Bull 77 and Aston Martin 22. So it was actually one of my worst fantasy weekends for a while. And that was purely just because Stroll was dreadful. Realistically, I should have changed to Piastri in the final fix and changed Alonso to Norris, but I wanted to save it because I thought there would be a better time to use it. But if someone did do a final fix, that was a very good choice to do it last weekend. I am now almost top 70k. And I'm 41st in my own league. Thank you all so much for joining that. We're getting close to that 100 mark. Thank you all for joining it. And hey, link in the description. I'll show the link now as well. Thank you all so much for participating in it. And obviously, like always, I'll give a shout out to the top 5, which is Ferrari Nice, George Russell in my pants, Rivaldi HV F1 team, Sani Formula 1, and Tudor Max. Well done to all of you there. And if you do watch this video, please comment down below with where you are in the global league, because I'd be very interested to know, because I'm pretty sure Ferrari Nice, you've got to be top 10,000, even better than that. So yeah, I'd be very interested to know any of the top 5. Comment down below where you are globally. And then to end off this video, I will briefly go over any other driver I have not talked about, because obviously I disagree with using some of these drivers, but some of you will still want to know what my opinion is on bringing them in F1 fantasy wise. So for Lewis Hamilton, he is just too expensive. 24.7 million doesn't get you enough points for that value. George Russell, again, technically could be a differential, but for 18.8 million and a lot less points than Perez, it does not make sense to have him over Perez. Same for Sainz and Leclerc. Norris, again, spoken about, he's too expensive. Gasly, too expensive. Ocon, too expensive, too little points. Magnussen, too expensive, too little points. Bottas, too expensive, too little points. And then onto constructors. Mercedes and Ferrari, they get you enough points, but way too expensive, considering you've got Aston Martin and McLaren, who are much better options at the minute. Then you've got Alpine, 10.4 million. Again, way too expensive for what they're giving you. Alfa Romeo, not enough points. Haas, not enough points. AlphaTauri, not enough points. And Williams, again, not enough points. So, comment down below, what team do you think is going to do best in F1 Fantasy for Hungary? And hey, I'll see you all later in this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye.